Welcome out to the BizNinja Radio Hour. This is your host, Tyler Jorgenson, coming to you live from sunny Southern California, where we're having a brutal winter with temperatures in the high 70s and low 80s. It's beautiful outside, and here we are inside. But I am grateful that you have tuned in today, whether you're listening on KCAA AM 1050, whether you're listening online through from bizninja.org/radio, or maybe you're listening on a podcast. Who knows? I'm just happy you're listening.
So today's show is going to be a lot of fun because I have the opportunity to bring on one of my life's virtual mentors. And I call him a virtual mentor because I've never actually met him, but I feel like I know him through his books and through his blogs. And so I have the opportunity to bring on Tim Ferriss, who you guys have heard me talk about a lot because he wrote the book, The 4-Hour Workweek, which changed my life, which led me to this radio show. And so you guys have heard me talk about it, even just as recently back as August, we had a show where we talked about some of the principles from that book. And so he's going to come on today to talk about his new book, The 4-Hour Chef, The Simple Path to Cooking Like a Pro, Learning Anything, and Living the Good Life. And if you know Tim through his books, you know that he usually writes on one topic or one theme, but really covers a variety of topics. And I'm assuming that this is going to be just like that. But we'll bring Tim on in a little bit to talk about that and ask him directly. So we're super excited about that. Also have the opportunity to bring on another author just after that, Tim Welch, author of The Defining Skill, which is another new book that just came out. So got a great show. Wanted to talk to you, and before we get going, I want to ask you a question. I want to ask you, what have you done to better your situation since the last time I spoke to you, or the last time you tuned into this show? You know, a lot has happened. Even if it was just a week ago that you listened to one of these shows, or if it was a month or two, or maybe this is the first time you've listening, so this is a challenge for you, a new call to action. But recently, the whole Hostess situation has really made me think. So if you don't know, Hostess, the maker of Twinkies and Ding Dongs and Snowballs and all those delicious little donuts, has filed bankruptcy and is moving towards liquidation hearings. And so there's kind of two sides to this story, and it seems there always is. There's the one side that's saying, hey, the unions and their greed has just gotten out of control, and this company can't run profitably anymore, and so boo for unions. And then there's the other side of the coin that's crying, hey, look at this. While they're filing bankruptcy, they're paying out millions of dollars in bonuses to their executives. Corporate greed. Corporate greed is the problem. And then there's the third side of the coin, which is buying all the Twinkies they can and selling them on eBay. And I want to talk to you about the third side of this coin, because it's the opportunists that are going to survive in the future. And the entrepreneur is the one that has the opportunity to say, hey, here's the situation I'm dealt. What can I do to make the best of it, really? And, you know, I'm not close enough to the situation to know whether it's the unions or corporate greed or maybe, you know, the Americans' palate for refined sugar has just dropped. I don't think it's that. But I'm not sure. But I do know that a lot of people bought Twinkies for a few cents a piece and were selling them for a few dollars a piece, and that's a pretty good markup. I didn't check to see what the most recent stats were on how expensive some of them went, but just pretty amazing situation. You know, American Icon of a company going down, but there's still opportunity there. So, and I'm sure that somebody else is going to buy them, another company that's maybe running more efficiently, and they're going to keep making them. But another interesting statistic that I was thinking about, being that yesterday was Black Friday here in America, where all of the retailers slash their prices, try to get people to come and do all of their Christmas shopping and end-of-year shopping at their stores. So they try to get them in with these low prices on everything. And did you know that last year, in 2011, Americans spent $52.7 billion on Black Friday? That's one day. In 2010, it was $45 billion. We obviously don't have statistics out quite yet for what they spent this year. But my question to you again now is, did you spend or did you create? So many people rushed out to Black Friday, rushed out to Walmart, rushed out to their local big box store and said, hey, there's a $1,000 TV and I'm going to get it for $600. And it was the super exciting, most wonderful moment of their life. And I've never really understood this whole euphoria that happens around it. I could find a lot of other ways to enjoy those hours spent for $300 in savings. But what I think is interesting is with $52.7 billion spent, how many of us as entrepreneurs found a way to get a piece of that pie? You don't need a very big piece of that pie to really improve your situation. And so, there are, with people this geared to spend, with Cyber Monday coming up around the corner, it's not too late. If you've got an online business or any kind of business, what can you do to drive some of that traffic your way? You really got to think about this kind of stuff. If you for sheer magnitude of revenues, $36 million is spent every hour at Walmart. And so you're not going to compete with them, but Americans are geared to spend. I ran a test just this last week or two on a new product that I was trying to see if it would be worth running and selling. And so I set up a website, ran some Facebook ads to a targeted group, and in a day and a half, with only like $30 in ad spend, if that, I had 6 potential sales. So what I was doing is I was saying, hey, here's the price, here's what shipping is, enter your name, your email address, and click order now. So I wasn't collecting any credit card information. They'd click order and say, hey, sorry, we're out of stock, but we'll let you know when we come in stock. And that's how I test out whether I think the idea is going to be good. So this is a $100 product that I had 6 potential orders within a day for only like $30 in ad spend. So it was obviously tested out well and moving to the next stage of product development and testing. And so there's all these things that we can be doing as entrepreneurs. So my call to action to you now is, what have you done, or what are you going to do now to improve your situation? Have you read the 4-Hour Workweek? Have you listened to the past episodes of the show on BizNinja.org? Because it's your turn. You can do this. So I want you to stay with us here through a quick break. We're going to come back, and we're going to come straight back into having Tim Ferriss on the air with us.
Fact. Identity theft is on the rise, affecting nearly 10 million victims a year and increasing at about 22% in 1 year alone. The average identity theft victim spends 330 hours repairing their identity, and for most people, it is just a matter of time before their data is compromised. IdentityCastle.com provides a full suite of privacy products, including the trademarked Early Alert System and $25,000 of identity theft insurance with zero deductible. Protecting yourself from the harmful impact of identity theft has never been easier or more affordable. For only $8 per month, you can get a best-in-class identity theft package by visiting www.identitycastle.com today. That's IdentityCastle.com. Protect your identity.
When you're looking for a place online to find the best in sports nutrition, head on over to the site that's best. Ain't no guess or premonition. The products you want, the products you need, at a price that can't be beat. Don't waste another moment or a workout until you've had the chance to meet Riptide Nutrition, feel the surge. Riptide Nutrition when you've got the urge to take your sports performance to the next level. Riptide Nutrition, shredded and jacked. Riptide Nutrition, get on the attack. When getting in shape and putting yourself to the test is the most important thing above all the rest. Check them out, then steal the show. RiptideNutrition.com, get ready, set, go!
Recorded.
All right, welcome back to the BizNinja Radio Hour. This is your host, Tyler Jorgenson, and I have a very special guest today. I want to welcome to the air Tim Ferriss, author of some of my favorite books, The 4-Hour Workweek, The 4-Hour Body, and brand new book out this week, The 4-Hour Chef. Thanks for coming on the air, Tim.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So my first question is, I read on your blog that thousands of bookstores are boycotting your book. What is going on?
It's a pretty exciting story. The 4-Hour Chef is the first major book out of Amazon Publishing, and as a result, Barnes & Noble, all of Barnes & Noble, and most indies are boycotting, banning the book as an attempt to counter Amazon, which I think is really short-sighted just because they're forcing their own customers to go to Amazon as a result of it.
Right.
And that doesn't strike me as very good for the profit and loss, but it's certainly been a very exciting opportunity for stirring the pot and having conversations about the future of content creation. I mean, this world is changing, and a lot is moving to digital. I think print is certainly really beautiful and helpful in some ways, but the gist of the boycott is they want to punish me as an author so other authors do not go to Amazon.
Yeah, I think it's going to backfire pretty handsomely on them. Like you said, things are changing so drastically. And now you've come up with some great ways to kind of counter this. What are some of those solutions that you've been pursuing to kind of get your book out there through alternative channels?
Yeah, it's been a great big experiment, and I've been able to try things that I probably wouldn't have either had the opportunity to try or even thought of trying, since I don't have any retail distribution really. So there are a few different things. I mean, the book, I should just say, as context for explaining some of these different approaches, the book is The 4-Hour Chef, a simple path to cooking like a pro, learning anything, and living the good life. So it's very much a cookbook for learning any skills faster, disguised as a cookbook for food. So that opens up the number of opportunities that I have for different types of promotion. One of them is a partnership with BitTorrent, for instance, which people think of as a tool for pirating things, but in fact there are a number of bands, musicians who've used BitTorrent and partnered with the company itself to promote their content. And BitTorrent has 160 million users with something like 600 to 700,000 new downloads a day. And while that is being downloaded, BitTorrent has the ability to promote whatever they would like on that download screen. And they can offer bundles of content, like in the case of the 4-Hour Chef, I'm offering behind-the-scenes videos, overseas travel videos, scans of previous editions or drafts of certain chapters, cut recipes, interviews that end up getting cut, like those with top chefs like Wally Dufresne of W50 in New York City, or we tracked Georges St. Pierre, GSP, the UFC champion, for 24 hours, did exactly what he ate and what his private chefs do. And all that stuff is available on BitTorrent. So that is one of the examples. And of course, part of the way that I evaluate these different promotions is not only how many books they sell directly, i.e. how many people click through from the BitTorrent page to Amazon to buy the book at 40% off, but also how much media travel do these promotions get. And BitTorrent was everything. I mean, it was Forbes, Fast Company, TechCrunch, on and on and on and on, New York Times, you name it. And that's also been the case with some of the things like the launch dinner, which was a few days ago. And we had some of the top chefs in New York City, all of whom are in the book, each cook a dish for this group of 60 to 80 media and friends predominantly. And that's turned into a big almost full-page piece in the Wall Street Journal today, as well as a piece from the New York Times. So it's been really fun. Most recently on Rally.org had put together a competition for readers to become booksellers themselves. So Rally.org is a crowdfunding site, similar to Kickstarter in some respects. But we played with the engineering a bit, because I know the startup, to allow people to create their own bookstores and then compete to be the top seller, in which case you get prizes from me and things like that. So those would be a few examples.
Yeah, and I think your background as an entrepreneur is much different than many authors, and so you're able to kind of see, hey, see things from a different angle, kind of see a lifetime value of the book getting introduced to someone, where they may not buy it now, but now they know you and they may buy the book down the road, or engage with you in some other way that may be even more meaningful. Because one thing I've found is a common thread throughout all of your writing, even on your blog, is about living the good life. And so how is this book an extension of that, and how is it going to help people to live the good life?
Well, the good life, I think, is a combination of two things. It's as far as I can tell, and I've gone to great lengths to look at this. I mean, for the book, for instance, went to tiny village in Okinawa, Japan, called Ogini, where they have the longest average lifespan. And I wanted to see what put years in the lives of these people, but also what put life in the years of these people, because they're a very, very happy group in general and very friendly.
Right.
So I think that the good life is a combination of achievement and appreciation, and you can get achievement by doing all the business stuff and creating things, which is, I think, a big part of life and gives me a lot of meaning, whether that's working with startups like Evernote or Uber or Shopify or stumbling upon Twitter or whatever, or writing these books. That's a big part of my life. But then the appreciation is just as important, and that is being thankful for what you have and making the most out of what you have. And if you aren't happy with any of the things you have, you're not going to be happy with anything you get. Right?
Sure, absolutely.
And I think that you can develop both of those skills. So cooking, in a way, blended for me the best of both worlds, because I could create a meal in next to no time, zero cleanup, etc. But then I could take that time I saved and put it into the dinner itself, meaning I could sit down and have a slow dinner for 2 hours with family and friends. And if you look at the predictors of marriage success, divorce, or otherwise, and also just general happiness, when you look at self-reported well-being in different countries, and there are a number of studies that have been done, long meals with multiple friends or family is pretty much the single best thing that you can do across the board. And it doesn't take much. I mean, once or twice a week, 2 meals with, let's say, 3 or more people. That's it. And so I'd say that food as a vehicle for all of these things is really fascinating. Because the kitchen is one of the...
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Because the kitchen is one of the few places where you can really use all of your senses. And using the kitchen as dojo in that way, you can actually become better at language learning, better at learning musical instruments like the guitar, better at sports, better shooting 3-pointers, all these things by training with food, which is pretty wild.
And I think what's interesting is it kind of plays into the analogy of, that you need to appreciate what you have, because you can't, when you're cooking, you can't add an ingredient that's not in your kitchen. So you end up enjoying something that was made out of the things that you had. And so I think that, that analogy carries that further, which is really great.
Absolutely.
You talk about cooking. Now, I think some people I don't know if they grasp why you're using cooking. And so you talk about it as a gateway skill, because really you are you believe in really hacking and understanding how to learn and master anything. But why is cooking the place to start?
Yep, there are a few reasons. So my readers have been asking for a book on accelerated learning for 4 or 5 years now, because I tackle all these weird things, whether it's a bunch of languages like Spanish, German, Japanese, Chinese, etc., or horseback archery, or tango, which I have a world record in, or whatever. But what they missed and miss much is the entire process for tackling all those things. And the reason I thought cooking would be fun to explore is because it's one of the things that I've failed at over and over and over again. It's one of the things I've quit over and over and over again. And I thought, what better way to showcase all of these techniques from the world's fastest learners than to apply it to something that I found really difficult and inconvenient and complicated. So that was the first reason. The second reason is that I really wanted to make things with my hands, and I just become maybe anxious or dissatisfied with closing my laptop every day and having nothing to show nothing to show for it. And I thought I wanted to try woodworking, and then that ended up being too involved, and I didn't want a crappy birdhouse in my living room anyway. So one day I saw my girlfriend cooking dinner, and that's when it struck me that food could be the opportunity. And then the last reason is, and this is something I discovered myself, that even if you never ever cook regularly, if you take just 1 week to, in a really counterintuitive, intelligent way, hack food and cooking, your experience of every meal for the rest of your life will go from like a black and white resolution to HD, a million colors, IMAX. So just from the standpoint of improving your enjoyment of something you do 3 times a day for the rest of your life,
right?
Taking the time to mess around with cooking for even a week is a really smart investment. In the same way that I have no desire to play basketball, but I spent a weekend figuring out like 3-pointers and foul shots with a guy named Rick Torbett, who's an amazing coach, just so I could watch Lakers games with 2 friends of mine who are obsessed with the Lakers and actually enjoy the games.
I love that aspect. I love that angle that you take, where, like you said about if you just take the time to really understand, what it is you're eating. I learned that when I lived in South Africa for a while, which I think you just visited recently. And, I had an Afrikaans friend who would create these like 5-course meals. And growing up here in America, I'd never experienced that. It was like, hey, here's McDonald's and enjoy it. And all of a sudden, enjoying food in a whole different experience and pairing things and having certain things before the following course to prepare your palate, all of a sudden food meant more. And so, and it sounds like you're doing that not only with food, but now you're saying, hey, let's do it with basketball so I can enjoy that more. With anything, understanding the building blocks in that help you appreciate it at a deeper level and therefore understand it and learn it better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I wanted to use the story of me being awkward with cooking to also point out the fact that I've been awkward with a lot of things, and despite that, have been able to learn. We'll see in my bio. For instance, when I first learned Spanish in school, people think of me as this guy who's good at languages now, which is kind of hysterical to me because when I was in junior high and forced to learn Spanish with everybody else, I failed. I was terrible at it. I mean, I couldn't string sentences together. And it wasn't until much later, after I'd been refining this process for accelerated learning that I call meta-learning in the book, that I was able to tackle Spanish. So I went from deciding I was bad at languages to learning Japanese in about a year, reading and writing, Mandarin Chinese in about 6 months, then German in 3 months, and then Spanish, my arch enemy. I tackled that in Argentina and got to the highest level of testing at the University of Buenos Aires in 8 weeks. And the reason that I say that is not to impress people, but impress upon them that there is a recipe for this stuff. And there are people out there already figuring this out, and you just have to find them, like Daniel Tannett. He learned Icelandic in the UK. He learned Icelandic in 7 days well enough to be interviewed on television. You have these incredible stories, and so my job is to go find these people and figure out what they're doing.
And so the first thing you have to do is you have to buck the traditional ways, right? I mean, if 100 people, if 99% of the world is doing it a certain way, most likely there's a better way to do it. And so, you're looking for those people that are kind of the outliers that are doing it differently but faster, and then just basically saying, hey, this is how you do this better because we found someone that can do it and rather than just because the textbooks say one way.
Yeah,
and I just absolutely love that.
Yeah, and I go out of my way to find the people who are doing weird stuff because typically they're the ones who are going to be setting new standards. I mean, if you go back to, say, the 1964 Olympics, I think it was, Dick Fosbury created the Fosbury flop. He was the first person to go over the high jump backwards. And people thought he was a joker. They ridiculed him and made fun of him until he won the gold medal. Now everyone does it. And I think that there are even thousands of Dick Fosburys out there right now doing things like that in different fields. And the challenge, but the thing that I like to obsess upon is finding those people and then sharing their methods through books like The 4-Hour Chef.
You know, and you've done this from the beginning. I mean, your very first book talks about basically doing that same thing with income automation, or basically in business, changing the way that the world looks at it. And now you're doing it again with The 4-Hour Chef. Now, the book The 4-Hour Chef, kind of like The 4-Hour Body, takes a different approach. It's not really written completely to be read linearly. How did you come up with kind of this new style of book writing?
It really came about in the 4-Hour Workweek to some extent, but then more so the 4-Hour Body. So the advice that I was given by a book agent several years ago was every chapter should be self-contained, like a magazine article, should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And from my own personal experience, one thing that bothered me about a lot of advice, how-to books, or even business books, was that they would spend 75% of the book telling you about the problem you already understood or you wouldn't have bought the book, and then 25% or 10% with actual actionable advice, and that always annoyed me. So I wanted each of the chapters in these books to be worth the price of the book. And the side effect of that is it's easier to read because you can jump around like a choose-your-own adventure book, and it's also easier to write. That's something that I realized. If I'm stuck on a given chapter, I don't have to just plow through it and suffer. I can actually jump to another chapter for a week, jump to another chapter for a week, and then go back to it with a fresher set of eyes. And all of that, I think, leads to a better experience for the reader, ultimately. And it's really, it's another... As you know, I'm sorry, I was just going to say, it's a big book. It's 672 pages of full color, 1,000-plus photographs, so forth and so on, and it's a choose-your-own adventure book. I don't expect anyone to read the whole thing. I expect people to pick their favorite 100 to 150 pages and go crazy.
Well, I'm excited. I have it here on my desk, and I've gotten, the first about 80 pages into it, and I'm enjoying it so far. I am your guinea pig, if you would, in the fact that I absolutely followed the 4-Hour Workweek and am living my muse. Got websites making the money. I followed the 4-Hour Body, lost a bunch of weight, and so everyone knows that I'm a big fan of yours. And so I guess I've just got to become a great cook now, and also really get better at meta learning. Otherwise, man, I'm just gonna not live up to your expectations. But
well, I appreciate that, and it means a lot to me that you've taken. There are a lot of books out there. I really appreciate that you've taken the time to read mine. And the good news about becoming a good chef, in the sense of the word that I use, meaning like a director in your life as opposed to a spectator, is that it doesn't take very long. I mean, it takes a week or two of experimentation, and then you figure out which rabbit hole you want to go down, and then you're set. But if you were to just finish the domestic section, which is I think a total of it's something like 15 meals that are an average of 9 minutes each to prepare. If you were to do that, but just let's say the first 6 meals, it would fundamentally change your experience of not only food but of learning, I think, forever. So I think you can do it. I'm confident.
Awesome. So I'm going to definitely get on that. Now, Tim, here's something that I always wonder, because I think people have this habit of looking at other people and saying, man, that guy's doing everything. He's got it all. And you're probably the epitome of that for most of us, that, you're writing books, you're traveling the world, you maintain just an amazing blog, and you influence people. I mean, I think you just got rated one of the top 7, like in the top 7 of most influential people in the digital era, something amazing, right? But what in your life is out there that you still want to do? What's the next big task for Tim Ferriss?
Oh, there's so many things I want to try. Yeah, the Newsweek ranking was pretty funny. I knew nothing about it until it came out, and I was like, really? Wow, that's pretty. That's fun.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of things I want to do. Like, for instance, I want to learn how to surf. That's something that has kind of eluded me because I've never really focused on it. So I'd like to go to Indonesia and learn to surf while also learning Bahasa Indonesian, which would be the language that I would focus on in Bali, for instance. That would be one trip that I'm hoping to take in the next few months, and almost certainly will. God, there's so many things. There's so many things I want to do. I mean, I still have the fantasy, of course, from first watching Bloodsport. I want to be able to do the side splits, but I'm not sure that's going to get any easier with time. I'm not sure how practical or even
I don't know if there's a hack for that.
Yeah, I think there are some hacks, but I'm just not sure. I think I would get there and I'd be like, all right, cool, and then I would have nothing to do.
It would have made a great picture for you, like the Steven Seagal jumping up and doing the side splits, across two counters. It would have been perfect for this book to do,
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
Well, I absolutely, appreciate you coming on. And if there's one kind of call to action or challenge you could leave our listeners with, what would that be?
The one call to action would be this, whether it's with The 4-Hour Chef or other books on learning, there aren't that many that address it broadly, but whether it's, Michelle Thomas, Michel for Spanish, or looking at the YouTube video of Axis of Awesome to realize you can play almost any pop song with 4 or 5 chords on the guitar. Take one of the skills, one of the hobbies that you've put on the shelf, something that you've given up on or quit long ago, and that you always wanted to learn, and dust it off and tackle it. Give it a solid shot. And just give it 2 weeks. It doesn't have to be 6 months. It doesn't have to be a lifetime. Give it 2 weeks, but go about it aggressively and confidently, and ideally using some of the kind of insurance policies from meta learning that I talked about in the book. But take one of those skills that you've given up on or put to the side because you're too busy, too much work, whatever it is, and try to rekindle that and tackle it. That would be my call to action.
I love it. And so I know that you have a website for this book. What is the URL for that?
Yeah, the website is just www.4hourchef.com, all spelled out. So FOURHOURCHEF.com. The movie trailer for the book is also now the most viewed nonfiction book trailer of all time. So I think it has, 1.5 million views or something, which is fun just to check out by itself. And there are sample chapters, tons of photos, total table of contents, the whole night. There's a bunch of stuff on the website.
Awesome. I wish you tons of success, Tim. I really appreciate you taking the time to write these books for the world, and, of course, for taking your time to come on the air today. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for taking the time, and happy holidays to you and everybody listening.
Fact. Identity theft is on the rise, affecting nearly 10 million victims a year and increasing at about 22% in 1 year alone. The average identity theft victim spends 330 hours repairing their identity, and for most people, it is just a matter of time before their data is compromised. IdentityCastle.com provides a full suite of privacy products, including the trademarked Early Alert System and $25,000 of identity theft insurance with zero deductible. Protecting yourself from the harmful impact of identity theft has never been easier or more affordable. For only $8 per month, you can get a best-in-class identity theft package by visiting www.identitycastle.com today. That's IdentityCastle.com. Protect your identity.
When you're looking for a place online to find the best in sports nutrition, head on over to the site that's best. Ain't no guess or premonition. The products you want, the products you need, at a price that can't be beat. Don't waste another moment or a workout until you've had the chance to meet. Riptide Nutrition, feel the surge. Riptide Nutrition when you've got the urge to take your sports performance to the next level. Riptide Nutrition, shredded and jacked. Riptide Nutrition, get on the attack. When getting in shape and putting yourself to the test is the most important thing above all the rest. Check them out, then steal the show. RiptideNutrition.com, get ready, set, go!
Call is now being recorded.
I'd like to welcome to the show today Tim Welch, author of Defining Skill. Tim, welcome to the show here on the BizNinja Radio Hour. It's good to have you.
Thank you, Tyler. It's nice to be here with you.
So tell me, what's the full title of your book?
The book is called The Defining Skill in Selling.
Okay, and I mean, why would, what made you want to write this book?
Well, I've been leading sales teams for about 33 years, working with sales professionals around the country, and I think there's probably a dearth in the curriculum, the content for training sales professionals, that this topic about the defining skill, which is really about the role of personal leadership in the selling process, there wasn't a discussion about it, that it needed to be emphasized, because I think ultimately, having watched sales professionals in many different environments for many different years, that the ultimate litmus test on high performance is about making good decisions, about doing the right thing, the right time with the right people, and that's really a leadership imperative.
So, there are countless books on sales. Some absolute classics, as well as just tons of shelf fodder. But what you saw that there was a gap and in this entire field, and you felt you could kind of answer that gap.
Well, I think it's a fair question, because certainly there is a lot of material about selling. Unfortunately, I think too much of it deals with behavior manipulation strategies. It's contemptuous in nature, in that we're fundamentally looking for ways to be able to manipulate, to coerce, to cajole customers into making buying decisions. And the philosophy about the defining skill is fundamentally different. It really purports a new model for selling, which is really a method, strategy. There's three specific leadership drivers: vision, character, and passion, which power or drive 6 very distinct selling skills. And the idea is to assist sales professionals in working at a level consistent with their own abilities and potentials. And so it's not about formulas, it's not about strategies, it's not about power ties or power closes, about things to way to manipulate people into buying decisions. It's a way to assist people, professionals, to work at a level that's consistent with their own ability. And when we can do that, even if it's a 5 to 7 or 10% gain in personal productivity,
right,
it can have significant impact in terms of revenue growth.
So it sounds like instead of focusing on things that a salesperson can do to basically manipulate the client, it's actually more of a focus on what things the salesperson needs to do to just be more effective as an individual.
I think that's right.
Would that be,
I think it's a fair statement. I think it's sort of the amalgamation of a lot of the literature about the science of personal achievement, and it's placed in the context of professional selling. And my experience has been, having worked with thousands of professionals around the country, that it's the thing that makes the greatest difference, is getting people. We sometimes, as business leaders, focus too much on products. We understand how they work, but we don't understand the personal dynamics of how people work. The defining skill in selling, it really addresses that. It's a tool to provide senior business leaders to be able to implement within their organizations, to nudge sales professionals to work closer to their potential.
Wow, okay. There's we're talking about, there's so many things happening in this field, right, where there's always new things coming out and people talking about what can be done differently. But the old adage of can or can you not teach an old dog new tricks. Do you find that it's sometimes difficult to help people that are entrenched in the sales industry see a new angle or take a new tact?
I don't think it is, Tyler. Really, I think in most instances, most sales professionals are looking for ways to improve their productivity, but they lack the skills. And the Defining Skill in Selling is a principle-based book where we identify specific underlying natural laws that govern behavior. Then we talk about practices, things that can be repeatedly done, which is where the learned power comes. That's where the skill is. So we're going to give them very specific tools to understand principles, laws, practices to repeat behavior that will develop skills. And in most instances, people who have a desire to move past some of the things that they get mired down in the daily drudgery of selling, it can be transformative in their professions. And so I think most people are looking for ways to improve. This is something that is not strategy or technique driven. It's something that will enable it's something that's transferable in every aspect of their life to help them function at a very high level relative to their own natural gifts and talents and abilities.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. So instead of just saying, hey, here is the skill, do the skill, you're saying here's the skill, but here's the principles behind it, and here's the practices that you can do to improve on that principle. By following these things, the skills happen. And so is that right?
That's exactly the case.
Now, so how can the defining skill? How can your book help a sales team to increase their production?
Well, I think it's just as we've been talking. I think as we start taking the focus that leadership, we have a tendency to think about leadership in terms of Winston Churchill and his remarkable ability to mobilize people during the period of 1940 in the Battle of Britain. Or we think about it as JFK, his stirring speech about putting a man on the moon in the early 60s. The articulation of a sense of vision, and we think about leaders in that capacity. We don't typically think about it in the management of our life. Leadership is relevant in selling, in the management of complex territories with competitors and a variety of different customers. It's relevant there for the same reason it's relevant in every organization. It leads to productive outcomes. And so what we're trying to do is take a basic model for selling that's based around leadership skills, vision, character, and passion that drive these 6 skills so that we can assist the deployment of resources and assets in such a way that we can maximize the use of time and assets and all the other things that I have available to me to maximize revenue in the territory. And that's really about critical decision-making. And all that decision-making is really about leadership.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, I was looking at your website at definingskill.com, and I saw something about sales paralysis. And I remember when I used to be in sales, this was something that came up a lot, that people would just, they knew what they were supposed to do. They knew that they were supposed to make some calls or do something, go out in the field, and they just kind of got stuck. How does your book help people overcome that?
Well, that's an interesting point because in the first chapter, I talk about these 8 symptoms of sales paralysis, and it has to do with sustaining levels of motivation or being an attentive listener or being prepared for client meetings or working with a sense of urgency. There are things like that, or wasting time or blaming others or not having a real capacity to find the energy to solve problems. So that the way the book is constructed is that we first start out with identifying these 8 symptoms that I think 95% of sales professionals in this country experience one or multitude of those symptoms almost constantly. Sure. And so then we're going to introduce a model. The model is based around, again, those 3 leadership drivers that I refer to, or leadership competencies. And then we'll talk about the skills that correspond with each of those leadership competencies. And then at the end of each chapter, we do a sort of self-diagnosis and understand how the implementation, the execution of the skills eradicate the symptoms of sales paralysis. So that's essentially what this whole book is designed around. We accept the fact that there's some common traits that we all experience that keep us from maximizing personal productivity. Let's introduce a new model
Let's look at the model. It's really based around personal leadership, and recognize at the end of this how the model can alleviate these nagging symptoms which hold us back and keep us from maximizing revenue potential, but more importantly, maximizing the potential that we have. Because I've worked in many organizations where we can have people who produce outstanding revenue numbers, but I think they know that they're working at a level that's maybe 60 or 70% of what their capabilities are. Ultimately, what the model is about is pushing us closer so that we're working consistently at a level that's consistent with our potential. And then we'll take the revenue numbers. We'll take whatever they are, because ultimately as a leader of sales teams, if I can get people to work at a level consistent with their potential, the revenue numbers are going to take care of themselves. Ultimately, that's the biggest challenge that we all face of leading sales teams. It's the elephant in the room. It's the elephant in the room of every self-training meeting. That we all know it's there, and so we have a tendency to talk about product strategies. We have a tendency to talk about economic forecasts. We have to talk about ways to differentiate from our customers. We have a way to talk about value propositions. What we don't talk about, that everybody knows that's existing in the room, and that is we've got half of the sales team that are working about 50 or 60% of what they're capable of doing. How do we fix that? If we can fix that, then ultimately the kind of revenue numbers that we're all interested in seeing, even in a declining market, we can see consistent revenue growth, even despite this ongoing economic austerity that we're seeing in our country.
That makes a lot of sense. So, I love it, and I hope that people go to your website. They can find you. I know it, online at Barnes & Noble and all the leading booksellers. But if they go to definingskill.com, they can learn more about you as well. Tim, I like to ask everybody this as kind of the final question in every interview is, you've accomplished a lot, but what's one major thing on your bucket list that you've just got to accomplish in your life? It could be traveling somewhere, doing something. I mean, you've written a book. That's something a lot of people want to do.
You say, what's one thing on my bucket list that I haven't done?
Right.
Well, I'm in the midst of, I did a transcontinental bike ride from Canada to Mexico, and we're now doing a similar ride from Key West, Florida to Canada. So, got to finish that. That's something that is on the list. It's 2,500 miles, and we're getting to be middle-aged guys that are riding this, and so that's something that I'm anxious to complete next fall.
Well, that's cool. I think it might be more motivating to end in Key West, but hey, that's your prerogative. But hey, I appreciate you coming on the show, Tim.
Thanks,
best of luck with your book and with everything. Have a wonderful day.
Appreciate you having me on. Thank you much. Bye bye.
All right, welcome back to the BizNinja Radio Hour. This is your host, Tyler Jorgenson. And hasn't this just been a wonderful show? We got to speak with Tim Ferriss earlier. And then follow that up with Tim Welch. And some of the great takeaways I had from today's show were really about accelerated learning and how, breaking things down into simple components and kind of taking out the excess allows us to learn things faster. I love that as a concept and really excited to read more of the 4-Hour Chef and learn even more about that. But something that struck me the most wasn't even necessarily one of the real main principles, but something that Tim was saying about cultures and places that have the greatest amount of satisfaction are those that take, time to have long meals with family and friends. And I'll tell you what, I had many of you know, over the last couple of years, I was doing an MBA out at USC and had the opportunity to have those kind of meals every couple of weeks with good friends. And as a family growing up, my family always really had the focus on having dinner together as a family. And I'll tell you, with kids and things like that, it's not very common that they're long, but just sitting down together, and having those family meals was really something that has become a huge part of my life, or was huge growing up. Try to do that same thing as a family now. But the thought of really making that a longer experience, slowing down the course of just serving food and getting back to whatever, and getting back onto the computers and onto your video games and iPads and everything, but really slowing it down, taking those times to visit over the meal rather than just consume a meal. I really love that idea, and I'm definitely going to take that as one of my main goals of things to improve on and work on over the near future, and take time to sit down with friends and just visit over a meal. And then something else that Tim said, when he talks about the 4-hour chef, and it's a root word of jefe, or the one that directs, and becoming the director in your life. I absolutely love that. I think that has been kind of my mantra for a long time, is that no one's going to do something for you. You've really got to design and take control and build the life that you want. Take charge. And I mean, you talk to a guy like Tim, and you can't help but leave feeling motivated to do that, because he's been doing this for years now. He's been saying, kind of bucking the traditions and doing the things that everyone says he can't do, and being the director of his life. But I want you to know, that's what all of us should be doing. No excuses of, well, I work 60 hours a week and so I can't do X, or, I'm too out of shape so I can't work out. It's like, no, what is it that you want to do? Take that first step now. Because the first step is the hard part, right? The second step's easier, and it only gets easier as you go. But to really be in charge of your life, and I'll tell you what, sometimes the hard thing about being in charge of our life is, one, we don't know who to blame. If we end up being wrong, we're the only one left. We can't go blaming someone else. And I was reading a book that was instrumental in my life recently. A long time ago, I was rereading it, called The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And one of the great quotes from that book comes very early on, and it says, "At a certain point in our lives, we lose control of what's happening to us, and our lives become controlled by fate. That's the world's greatest lie." Meaning that's not real. That's what some of us just start accepting. We start accepting that our lives are controlled by fate and that we're not in control anymore. And so Tim Ferriss reminds us, no, you are in control. You're the director of your life. So take control. Take that control back. Stop saying things like, well, if it's supposed to be, it's meant, if it's meant to be, it'll happen. Or some things are just meant to be, right? Stop saying like that, because they disempower you. If you want something, it's your job to make it happen. And so those were just a couple of the takeaways I got from Tim Ferriss. Really loved that. And hopefully you enjoyed the interview with Tim Welch as well, and talking about how really focusing on principles will help us to improve as well on skills. And I think that's great. So really enjoyed both of those interviews. And enjoyed asking both of these guys what's the next thing on their bucket list. I mean, Tim Welch had a great one, going from riding from Canada to Mexico, and Tim Ferriss talking about learning, surfing in Indonesia. Now, it's not enough for Tim to just go and surf somewhere, to learn to surf. He needs to surf in Indonesia and learn the local language. He's going to learn the culture and really immerse himself. And I love that. And it's those types of paradigm-shifting ideas that have really allowed me to shift the things that I think are normal or acceptable in life. And so now I've got my family trying to think about, hey, what could we do that's something that's big that we want to do, that's not limited just by what other people think we can do. So we're talking about, hey, maybe we can, go live in Italy for a month, or rather than just go on a quick vacation. And so I hope that this show, the BizNinja Radio Hour, inspires you to some degree to improve yourself in some way. So if that means simply, doing something like starting a business, great. If that means taking the first step to getting into better shape physically, great, go do it. If it means traveling more, spending more time with your family, just make that change. One change for the better will start a domino effect that will ripple throughout your life, and you'll just, I know that you can do it. So that's my challenge to you today. Here from the BizNinja, go out and do something.
Fact. Identity theft is on the rise, affecting nearly 10 million victims a year and increasing at about 22% in 1 year alone. The average identity theft victim spends 330 hours repairing their identity. And for most people, it is just a matter of time before their data is compromised. IdentityCastle.com provides a full suite of privacy products, including the trademarked Early Alert System and $25,000 of identity theft insurance with zero deductible. Protecting yourself from the harmful impact of identity theft has never been easier or more affordable. For only $8 per month, you can get a best-in-class identity theft package by visiting www.identitycastle.com today. That's IdentityCastle.com. Protect your identity.
When you're looking for a place online to find the best in sports nutrition, head on over to the site that's best. Ain't no guess or premonition. The products you want, the products you need, at a price that can't be beat. Don't waste another moment or a workout until you've had the chance to meet. Riptide Nutrition, feel the surge. Riptide Nutrition when you've got the urge to take your sports performance to the next level. Riptide Nutrition, shredded and jacked. Riptide Nutrition, get on the attack. When getting in shape and putting yourself to the test is the most important thing above all the rest. Check them out, then steal the show. RiptideNutrition.com, get ready, set, go!